Just so you know, I'm not entirely hostile to the idea of God. I think it's possible that there's some kind of God that exists.
I'm so glad to hear that. It's a start.
Well, don't get your hopes up. I'm miles away from Christianity.
I'm not so concerned how far away you are, so long as you are moving towards Christ, not away from him.
Well, this God I might concede is possible is nothing like Christ.
Is he a good God?
Not really.
A bad God?
No, definitely not that.
Does the God that you think just might be possible love you?
No. All of these questions are way off the mark. The kind of God I could believe in wouldn't be like us at all. It sounds foolish to me when Christians or other religious people give God human-like characteristics. This sounds very primitive to me.
What kind of characteristics would you give him?
I don't know. Something I can't conceive of. All I know is that we're not the center of the universe. So it's unreasonable to expect God to be anything like us.
Is there anything positive you can say about him?
I guess whatever God is. And I dislike using the pronoun him. It is the power behind creation. Maybe it is the creation itself. Kind of like the God of Spinoza or Einstein, perhaps.
But not a personal God?
What does personal God even mean?
Well, the classic phrasing of it in Genesis is that God made man in his own image.
Don't expect Genesis to mean anything to me. Besides, we've talked in other videos. I thought you accepted evolution and an old Earth as facts of biology and geology.
I do. But in the matter of God making man in his image, I happen to think Genesis got it right.
But if you're going to be selective like that, you certainly can't expect anyone to take Genesis as an authority on this matter.
I don't. I think the truth of the statement can be shown from experience, without bringing any part of the Bible into play.
I'd be interested to hear that. From my perspective, it looks like man made God in his own image, not the other way around.
You are probably familiar then with the idea that if God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him.
Indeed. Voltaire said that, I believe.
Yes, and there is much truth to it.
How so?
Well, man without God is in a very strange predicament. He has no idea what he is, where he came from, or where he is going. God has the potential to explain that, but only if he is the type of God in whose image we are made.
Explain.
Well, first, consider the fact that we are conscious. We experience things. We are alive. We feel things. This is something science has no explanation for.
Don't we understand more and more each year how the brain works?
The brain, yes. But the scientific model of the brain is to describe it like a machine. Which it is, to some extent. Memory banks, processing rules, learning algorithms, all of that. Nature can explain a lot about how we are built and even how we behave.
So what's missing?
What's missing is why there should be anyone home up there. If I might interject Genesis again for a moment, it's like God breathed into all of our nostrils at birth. We are alive on the inside. In principle, we can indeed build a robot or a computer that does all of the processing functions that the human brain does. In playing chess, the computer does it better. In 100 years or so perhaps it will be more intelligent in most other ways as well. But we cannot make a computer conscious. We cannot bring it to life, not even in principle.
Maybe we will discover some new theory someday.
About how non-living matter becomes a living soul? I doubt it. The problem seems philosophical, not technological. We've managed to beat nature in just about everything already. Our planes fly faster than birds. Our cars can outrun a cheetah. Our pyramids can outlive a tortoise or a Joshua tree. Everything nature came up with by accident already has or soon will be surpassed by human design. But consciousness is something we cannot even fathom. So it is reasonable to conclude that it did not evolve from matter but was bestowed upon each of us by God.
Suppose I grant you that. Why would such a God have to be personal?
Well, he couldn't give us something he didn't have himself. And to be able to bestow consciousness upon us, which is something we cannot do to flesh or metal, He must have it in an even larger way than us.
So he's not like us.
He's not smaller than us. He's conscious and personal and has the human attributes of being able to feel, experience, and will things. Plus more than that, but not less than that. The God of Spinoza or Einstein strikes me as less alive than we are, and not really a God at all.
That's part of the attraction for me, I suppose.
But such a God does not explain what we observe in our own minds, the ability to experience anything. Only a personal God can make sense of that.
Perhaps. But you already admitted there's a temptation for man to invent God. That is cause for suspicion.
It is also evidence that he does in fact exist. There's a principle of nature, going back to Aquinas and Aristotle before him, that no natural desire is in vain.
What does that mean?
Lewis explains it better to the modern reader. He writes, "Creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exists. A baby feels hunger, well, there is such a thing as food. A duckling wants to swim, well, there is such a thing as water. Men feel sexual desire, well, there is such a thing as sex. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world."
So the desire for God to exist makes him exist. I desire to have $1 million in my hand right now, but that doesn't make it true.
No, but the $1 million exists. It's just not in your hand. Similarly, the desire is in most hearts for a God that we can relate to, a God that can understand us. And if the desire exists, it probably has a way of being fulfilled. If not in this life, then in the next. In this sense, the necessity of inventing God is a clue to his actual existence. Take that last argument for whatever it's worth. The argument from consciousness is the stronger one though.